I am PJ Fredericks. I was born 11th July 1948. We were 4 brothers and 2 sisters. My mother was a housewife, and my dad, he was born in Toseraba. And so he came down here as a builder, and he met my mother here, and afterwards he then got married in 1948. I was also born in 1948, and he was, I think, the first real entrepreneur here in Kleinmond, because he was a builder, a bricklayer, and he also, later on, he was a subcontractor. He can do everything: builder, carpenter, plasterer, plumber. He did it all. And afterwards, while he was a subcontractor, he trained almost everybody in my generation. He trained them as bricklayers, carpenters, plumbers, and so on. He was also a contractor. Yeah, I cannot come to the word now.
So you used to assist people in this area, in
Yes,
building houses
yes,
and so
building
on.
houses,
Yeah.
but also he has a lorry, and he collects sand and so on, delivering it to the different building sites and so on. During those years, he was, all the building stuff was on municipal land. Afterwards, he said, "Oh no, you cannot get sand here." And outside Kleinmond, there's a farm, Esterklub. They own it, the Alpoort. I think he hires Falfling. I don't know if it was from the provincial government or the central government. He hired it from them, and from there on, they have sand mines.
Okay.
And he started there after he reached an agreement with Mr. Delpoort. And so he goes on with it. But after a couple of years, his brother says, "Oh, here is something good, can be good." And they kicked up my dad, and they began their own Delpoort transport. So he lost that, you see. But afterwards, during the 60s, abalone diving began here in Hawston, and from Hawston they came here to the harbour, from where they launched their boats and so on. After...
So were you born here?
Yeah, I was
In
born...
this house?
No.
Okay.
I was born in Proteadorp.
Proteadorp, okay.
Proteadorp.
Proteadorp, where is it?
This is the colored area.
The colored area,
It's
okay.
also called colored area.
Yeah.
He was... my mother was born in the harbour in 1930. I think one of the first colored children who was born there. First, in the 1900s, there were a lot of white families living in the harbour. They were also fishermen. But later on, my grandpa, I think they were working in Petersburg on the whaling station there. And they moved from that place down to Claremont, to the harbour. My mother and I think all the sisters, they had 9 sisters and 1 brother. And we all, as Claremont developed and so on, more and more people, builders.
So what was your mother's surname?
She was a Samuels.
Samuels. Okay.
Yes. But our great fathers, they were whites. See? Our mother was a white. And they were one of the first inhabitants of this area. Because they had a farm here in the Kogelberg Biosfeer, near Ouderbos, what I called White's Farm. And it is believed that that farm stretched from the whole Kogelberg area here, as well up to, what's the farm's name? Ouderbos. I cannot call it. It was a very, very large area. We are busy now with
the land claim.
Land claim.
Okay.
For that farm. We will see if it will be successful or so on.
Yeah.
You see? Because I cannot see if they have given us the White's Farm, that it is, they have everything there, you can see it. But afterwards they say, no man, this is not that farm, this is Erwin down below. It was later on disposed of White's area during that time.
So zeker William Harry White was
Yes, it was my uncle. It was my grandma's brother.
Okay. So are you saying to me, so from your uncles there are still some who are alive?
No, no. My uncle, that uncle, my mother's brother is dead, and there's only one sister who is still alive. And I hope that she will be here in Claremont this afternoon, so you can also talk with her. And she's now nearly 79 years old.
79.
More or less.
So from that place of Proteador, do you still have a plot there? Or
No. We have one plot there. My father, mother gave it to the youngest brother, and he sold it a couple of years ago. You see? But afterwards you won't believe it. He ends up in a caravan. See? But the old Proteador, that was built, I think, here in the late 40s, 1948. When most of the people, the old fishermen who were living down below, you can see my mother, there were 9 sisters. All got married. Only sister, the eldest one, was living in Potterville. You see? The other 8, they got married. There were no place here for them. And so, I don't know if it was as a result of apartheid, but then I have to move. to Protea to work. I think there were 18 to 20 houses. It was it was like this, got up, one street, round, other street. That was all there was. We have a small school building. I think this and the other one, the other room, two together. That was our first school year.
In Protea.
My mother, for example, and I think all the sisters, they could not read or write because there wasn't a school year. See? Only this aunt of mine, and she was I think 75, between 75 and 79. She went to school, and she was afterwards a teacher. But the rest of them, okay, the younger people, but the older ones,
Could not
they
go
could
to
not
school.
go to school because there was no.
So you started school here in Protea?
No, yes, I go to school in Protea.
Yes.
I say it was a small school because we only have 20 houses here, 12 people. But there were still people living in the harbour. And later on, the Anglican Church, they built a house, a school there. We served as a school as well as a church. And today they have a new school under the state. And the old school now is the church, Anglican Church.
So who was the first principal?
The first one I can remember was Mr. S. He has or had family ties with the S family in Caledon. And later on, he turned white. And I met him afterwards again. I was one of his first school children. Afterwards, at Hewitt, he was a lecturer there.
So you met him there?
I met him there again after all these years.
Your high school, where did you attend?
I was 12 years old. In standard 6, I went to Botterville English school, also Anglican school, and from then on I went to Swartberg High School in Caledon. Yes. Luckily, it was then a high school, because before that, when I started in 1962, it became high school. Before that, I can remember Reverend Beulah Dreyer. She was from Hawston. She still has a house in Hawston. And she told me 2 or 3 weeks ago that they went by bus to Caledon. It was then known as, what do you call it? School up to standard 8.
That was a junior.
Today it's junior
secondary.
But in fact days in Afrikaans they called it middelbare school during that time. And afterwards they went to Genadendal, to Immelwieder, to finish their high school. And that afterwards I worked for a year in Claremont on the fishing boats, Pellemoen boats. Also with my brothers in the building trade for a year. And in 1967 I went to Europe.
So in your work was it the one in
in Athlone, yes.
That teachers college.
Teachers college.
Okay. So it's an old teachers' college, that one.
Yes.
Okay.
What's it today? A training college for...
For teachers as well.
No,
Still
not for teachers. I think in the building trade,
Okay.
more or less.
So during that time then, say let's look at maybe in the 50s, 60s, was there any resistance in this community in terms of forced removals from people of the community or what?
No, not that I can remember. I know the teachers in the region, they were very political, because most of them were part of the TLSA, Teachers League of South Africa, and they organized political meetings. Reverend, what's his name there in Genadendal, played the Wessels. He played a huge role during these years, and mostly all the teachers, they were part of the TLSA. You see, most of them. And they organized our school life. They organized, yes, the politics. We don't know about that, but cultural, choirs, what else, concerts, sports, everything was under their control. You see? I think that is why people rated teachers during that time as very high in esteem, you see.
So how was the facilities in terms of sports field and so on in the community of Proteatorp during that time? There were libraries, something like that?
No. There were no such things. We only have a rugby field. That was opposite, go right down with the Pamita Road, opposite Harbour Road, where there was industrial buildings out. That was our rugby field. And it was sandy, some grass patches. During winter, we have a couple of dams there. But we liked it. That was our sport. And during the 60s, we were living next to the rugby field, opposite Harbour Road. You see, Mr. Esser's house, the principal's house was at the end of the road here, the corner house. On your right hand side, that is Harbour Road. And next to it was a large L house, L type house. That was our house. Next to it, us, my nephew, my mother's sister, they lived there. And it was opposite the rugby field. Sure, you can see we were playing rugby every day. And but other facilities, no, there was nothing.
So tell me, the high school, when did they build high school in this town?
No, there's still no high school here.
Even now?
Even now.
No hospital?
No, there's no hospital here. Only a clinic. The school went up to grade 9. I think that was in the 90s. 96, 97, 98. They can get grade 9 here, and then we went down to other schools in the city. But from this year on, they have No, I said, grade 8 and 9, they have to go to high school
Outside Claremont.
outside Claremont. So now it's only up to grade 7.
So how did then the parents organize the transport of their children to go, say for example, to Caledon, to Hawston School or to Port River? Do they organize themselves transport, or how was the mode of transport then?
Okay, let me see. During the 80s, 70s and 80s and 90s, the children from Claremont, they could go to Swartberg High School.
That is Caledon.
That's in Caledon, and there was Hawston where they could stay. Some parents preferred to send their children to Innovator in Genadendal, also high school, Hawston, and some parents even send the children to Groenberg in the town. Today, there are no hostels, only one hostel in Genadendal. The hostel in Caledon is now Welland College. And the parents who cannot afford, they can send the children to Hawston by bus. And I think to the Rust High School. It's the 2 schools with no school fees. You see?
So you're saying the rest way?
The Rust? No. The Rust is a farm.
Okay.
Near Kromko. Here's the entrance to the school. But surprisingly, many people don't like to send their children to Hawston. They prefer to send their children to Groenberg and so on. Some are even now today in Innovator. But you see, the fees of hostels today are high, and they definitely cannot afford it.
Tell me, the Anglican Church, who was the main priest between Hawston and Claremont?
Now, during that years, the Holy Trinity Church in Caledon, that was our main church. That was our pastory. They have a very, very large area. You can see, I think, Riviers on the end, Grapau, Potter River, Belize, Claremont, Gansbaai, Stanford, Hermanus, Hawston. We, as children, we have had communion once every 3 months. See? When I went to Caledon to school, it was strange. You see, you can have Holy Communion every Sunday. You see, it was strange. But today, our pastor is in Potter River. And the 4 churches there are Potter River and Main, Klein, Belize, and Hoek. But most of the people from Hoek left the area, so it is a very small church now, the one in Hoek. But every 2nd week and 4th week, ourselves here in Claremont and in Hoek, we receive Holy Communion, and the 1st and 3rd week in a month, whatever and Belize they are to get their communion.
I think there's something that I did not touch on. I didn't hear as to how did you end up with your family, how many children do you have, and so on.
I met my wife during the 70s. She was a nurse in Caledon Hospital. I saw her for the first time, but we really get to know each other after a year or so. She came here. You see, Hawston was, during that time, Hawston was the place to be. Everything was going on in Hawston. Hawston didn't feel the apartheid years as we felt. You see, was, I mean, I couldn't believe it when I saw how many families, white families, who was young Claremont, was born and get raised in Hawston. You see, that was in early years. And then they came from Hawston to Claremont to stay here. Yeah, that was me. But I want to talk to you about some of the notes of the old town government here.
Yeah.
At that later on. A year later on, and then in 76, we got married in St. Michael's Church in Middleton. And for more than 20 years, I stayed in Middleton.
Okay.
See? Well, my wife was still working as a nurse in the hospital. I myself was a teacher at Swaper High School. We have 3 children. Garth is the eldest. He is now 38 years old. Second one, Ensign, is 35. And daughter, the youngest one, is 30 years. The 2 sons, he is living here with us. The middle one is also in Claremont. He is living with his girlfriend. And the daughter is living in Kraaifontein. And for nearly 20 years, so 18 years, I was the superintendent, what you call it in Afrikaans.
Inspector.
Kursusvader of the Swartberg Hostel. And my wife later on resigned as a nurse, and she became the matron of the hostel. And we had place for 216 children in the hostel, 108 boys, 108 girls. In the beginning, where children, you won't believe it, Swellendam.
You were in the hostel and so on. Now, can you just brief us, how was the student life and how did you view them? I know that in the 80s,
Yes.
there was sort of that mood of revolutionary mood among the students and so on.
Yes, that was part of our life. The student, I can remember, it was 1980, 76, we have 80, 84, 85. That was the year 85, Ilse was born. And that was the worst, because you cannot teach the children. They were running on the stoops, and there was chaos. And they had their leaders, and we know why they were protesting. They were always, we want equal rights and so on. And that was what we also wanted. But strangely, it was, during that year, it was really bad because Western Cape, the old government, they closed the schools during September. They closed the schools and even the hostels, and children have to go to the house, to their homes. That was how bad it was during that time, during 85. But strangely, while they were boycotting at school, they never boycotted at hostel. You see, because the reason, it was our home. You see, where we stand. We are not going to boycott here. It is at school where we, as all the students, where we boycott during the years.
So, you know any student organization which was existing at the time?
Yes, I know. What was it? What's it called?
Congress of South African Students.
COSAS. That was the people. Was during that time actually really behind all this. I can tell you one thing. Just our head student during that time, he was against this whole uprising at school. And I told him, okay, you are going to the University of Western Cape. I'm not going to influence you, but I will be here, but you're going to think after a couple of years. So after a couple of years, he came back to me and I said, now I see. I was wrong all the years to talk against this school boycotts and so on. You see? Because we thought during that years that his mother was helped by a farmer, and that farmer influenced him. You see? That's what we thought during that time.
Okay. Now, in Caledon, was there in the community any political influence? Because I understand at the time there was also tricameral parliament, and there were also people who were coming from, let's say from 1983, there were organizations like the United Democratic Front, and we had sort of sports unions were like against non-normal sport in normal society and those kind of things. Was there any such thing also in Caledon at the time?
Yes, in sport definitely. Yeah, we had there. I can remember in Caledon there were two rugby clubs. The Progress Rugby Club and the Standards Rugby Club. And they it's not rugby now. They formed one club. But then they formed one club afterwards to decide where are we going to play, for SARU or in Federation. And the club decided that they will go with the Federation route. And then there was a split. And a new rugby club was formed, and this new club played in SARU, in the Poland area, sub-union, the Groenland Rugby Union. That is in rugby. The tribe parliament, there was also people who was against it, but people were also for it. I know there was one teacher who decided to say, okay, I'm going to stand as a representative. Yes. And he was elected, and he stood there for a couple of years until this parliament was dissolved as well.
Okay.
But people did, as people were against it because that was why they formed a new rugby club. You see? Because they cannot play with it.
Let me tell you, in Clermont, were there any people from the colored community who owned business or who were involved in the fishing industry? Because I believe that the fishing industry was sort of the main thing that people were doing there.
Yes. Fishing was our people's main income. But you can see fishing in my grandpa's time. Yeah, they go out with inboard engines, and the boats belonged to white people, and I think it was 5 horsepower. So it was a slow journey. Go up, and our office rangers are there. So many days they have to stay at home. And while they were at home, they were busy with their fishing lines. There were no nylon cuts as we call it today. There were no such things. They had the lines, I think it was tow. And they used blood to make it a fishing line. And they were busy with their nets, fishing nets. See? Just to make sure it is ready for when they use it. And straight through, my nephew, I think you are going to see him also, Nolan Swartz. His father was also a fisherman, and he and his 2 other brothers were also in the fishing trade. Not them, the 3 only, they were the first. It was afterwards, it was the 4th one, the 5th one, the 6th one. All of them were part of the fishing trade. One of them also became a builder. So in that, the 2 linked together with each other. Many were in the building trade as well as the fishing trade. During snook time in Stormy's Bay, many of our people, the fishermen, they went with their boats down to Stormy's Bay as well as Hawston. Hawston's rugby club, they were weak during those times because for 3 or 4 weeks, the young people are catching snook in Stormy's Bay. They stay for a month or 2 months. Catching snook. They were living in tents during the holidays. We as kids and the wives went also to enjoy life in Stormy's Bay. Later on, from the fishing trade, during the 60s, the abalone trade come in. As I told from a couple of Hawston divers come here, and then again the 3 Swartz brothers, Nolan, Abraham, and Michael. They were the first divers, and I think they not get financial assistance, and they asked my father to assist him, and he began with him the fishing trade. They used the money was split evenly until they were they can work on
their own. So did your father and the others own some boats? There were any fishermen of this town that ever owned their boats and so on?
Yes, later on. In the beginning they didn't have it. But later on, I was only now speaking of 3. Afterwards was one of my other cousins, I Olker, Tos Karelsen, Danny Arendsen. They all were divers. And all of them later have their own boats. You see, their own equipment to the sea, not only to dive abalone, but also they have their own crew to catch fish. They were really fishermen. Not nowadays. Many of the people who have these boats, the owners, they are standing on here, sitting there bakkie, and the people are going out to catch fish. So that is the modern
Trade. So they don't work from the sea to a factory. There's no people who own factories, who own the
No. Here in Claremont, this is a Chinese. And his name is Tom, I don't know, it's his he, governor. He is the owner of Rotary. And many of them catch fish for him. The delivery there, he paid to them, he exported it and so on. But still, you see, there's a big difference between what certain factories pay to the quota holders.
Up to now, in terms of the fishing industry, do you see any improvement?
On this scale now, here in Claremont, how many people have quotas here? 50, 60, between 50 and 100 have crayfish quotas. See? But it depends on the person himself,
Okay.
what he does with that money he receives. Because some of them, for me, there was no improvement in their lives. But then the others can definitely see that is the people who has improved their lifestyle. The fishing, okay, I don't know if there are much fishing over anymore. But a couple of years ago, they decided that only the quota holders for fishing can go to the sea and catch large amounts of fish. Today, you can go out to the sea, but every person on the boat, if you don't have a quota, you can only catch in sea. You see? And you cannot sell it. So that, I think that was a big fault of the government. Even many of them have boats, and they go to sea to catch fish for a living. But afterwards, one of my nephews, he was a fisherman all his life, but he didn't apply for it because he didn't believe Ahmed. And then afterwards, so he cannot go to sea. He has to catch 10 or 10 silverfishes, and so on. And I think that was definitely, something that hurt the ANC, definitely during the elections later on, especially in this
fishermen's villages.
Yes, definitely that was. But again, it depends on people.
Yeah.
For some of them, they receive it, but suddenly they have money. And some of them receive 5,000 rand every month. Some 10,000 rand every month. Before that, they didn't receive it. But they were used to this, like, as a bakkie boy, as a fisherman, at this money, chup, there it goes again. You see? Now you have 5,000, 3,000, 5,000 rand. They don't budget.